Yeah, maybe maybe we should have done that on Tuesday. I thought about that. Anyway, okay. Well, let's get started. You guys ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Full throttle inside the playbook of high-performing marine dealerships. Hi, everyone. David G. Welcome again to this edition of Boating Industry Insider. So happy to be joined by Hayley Hollen, Dealer Spike, Head of Brand and Client Marketing, and Bill Koehn, Director of Digital Marketing for Dealer Spike. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, David. Happy to be here.
So excited about this. In the marine market right now, we all spend time talking to dealers. The top performing dealers aren't doing just a little better. They're doing a lot better. The gap between the best stores and everyone else is widening. And it's not just always about budget or market size. It comes down to a handful of habits that high performers execute consistently, and then how smartly they spend their digital marketing dollars, which we all know are finite. Dealers winning right now aren't doing anything exotic. They've built a foundation, they've layered the right tools, and they run it with discipline. This episode gets specific about what those habits look like, so stay with us. Holly, let's start with you and dive right into this. Let's talk about that performance gap. We know it's real. Why are some dealers pulling away from the pack?
Well, I think it's important to take one step back and ask, why did we even do this report in the first place? The 30-second history is we were challenged with the idea of, do we even have a story to tell? And do we have enough data to support it? So Dealer Spike we're very proud of this, over 6,800 customers between Canada and the United States. And so of that base, we were able to surmise a subset of the data of our dealers, proving that of the top 10% of our 6,800 customers, those dealers are generating 4.5 times more leads than the rest of the market, which is an incredible feat. They're also turning more inventory, 54% more inventory than the average dealer. And that's not a small edge. That's a huge advantage. And we continue to see this trend as we peeled back the layers of what else could we tell. The why behind those numbers, top performing marine dealers specifically carry about 5 times more inventory than the average. And then roughly 80%, I'm going to round up here to the decimal, but about 80% of them are running multiple layered tools. So not just a website, but your website, a payment calculator, trade in value, maybe even have a mobile app. Good on you. All of those pieces, digital retailing, digital marketing, and your website come together to make the ultimate inventory merchandising tool that helps list your inventory right from the get-go. So we're seeing an average of 2.4 to 2.5 turns for the average dealer. And what we're seeing of the top 10% is more like 5 times, which is crazy. That's a huge gap in between what they're doing. And Bill can speak to, he's my counterpart on the digital marketing side, so he knows what our people are spending of that, the cream of the crop, the top 10%. But when we're looking at the data, what the data is telling us is just that they're doing other things. They're not just relying on a website. They're going beyond that.
Yeah. So I think that some things to kind of pepper in for Hayley is ultimately, right, when dealers have too much inventory in stock, right, they're needing to go out and needing to go market. And in a time that we've all felt like this year is not like the last year, and I feel like we've been saying that for like the last 5 or 6 years, unfortunately, but we're ultimately selling through a variety of different season reasons, economic, macroeconomic, but the goal has always been, right, to move the units, sell the inventory, and there are definitely dealers that are doing that a little bit more aggressively and a little bit better than other dealers out there, and specifically in terms of moving aged inventory, which relieves a lot of stress and pressure from when manufacturers are producing more. The dealers don't want to be left with increase in their floor plan cost, because what does that do? It shrinks their margins, it drains their cash, it basically leaves them in an opportunity not to be able to hold grosses or sell more down the line. But what most people don't understand, or even consumers, right? When we talk about like the rising costs, and we all hear it on the news every single day, we don't necessarily think about, well, the rising cost to advertisers or the rising cost to get in front of consumers is also going up and has also gone up. We're just talking specifically about cost per click, which is a relatively common and well-known term, for most dealerships that are advertising in this space. But over the last year, right to the end of 2025, we saw a 15% increase in that cost per click, which means that they were just not able to get in front of or advertise or get as much traffic and leads to their dealership or from their website by the end of the year. And that ultimately impacts, their click-through rates, their conversions, and how much they can spend. And then they're looking at the following year to see what their budget's going to end up being for 2026 and how the market's going to shake out. But, the winners in these markets, they stay agile, they stay dynamic, they ebb and flow, and budgets are getting squeezed and buyers are shopping around and looking for pricing. They have an always-on type of strategy, and they're talking to their reps to reallocate, specific funds to more efficient, more cost-effective manners, because ultimately the end goal is always just, let's get in front of these dealers when they are ready to buy. And hopefully that's, been the last few months and leading up to, the Memorial Day weekend that's coming up next weekend, when we know that dealers are going to be looking for sales and consumers want to get out on the water. So it's an exciting time.
Let's talk about being in front of those buyers, those prospects, those customers. We talk all the time about this frictionless environment, 24/7, always on, people shopping from their couches at 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and how do we meet those people? How do we keep the conversation going? How do we create engagement when nobody's at the store and nobody's online? So what I talk about all the time is that the buyer has changed dramatically, but the recreational boating industry, by and large, the loop hasn't caught up. So let's talk about that kind of unpack that broad notion that shoppers, prospects, our customers, they're simply not moving in a straight line anymore. So how do we get them? How do we catch up to them?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, we talk about the funnel and different aspects of where consumers are in their buying process, whether they are looking generically, they're just kind of shopping around, talking to their friends and families, looking at the dock next to them, seeing what their buddy has. But it doesn't mean it's linear. It's not straight line in any way. And dealers, we hope it's a loop, which ultimately means that they're going to buy from you, service from you, winterize from you, come back the next season, want something bigger bathroom, bigger engine, right? Whatever that ends up being. But the time in between they take that boat out of the water or they winterize it to the time that they get to the boat shows in Q1, and then when they start to really look at what they need for the following season and putting it in the water, I mean, that period of time is very, very short in a lot of ways. And it's very powerful because we know that these consumers are going to be online. They're going to be watching, lots of TV and shows, and seeing all these different ads come across their devices, and at work, at home, on the go, wherever it ends up being, and they're going to be comparing, and especially as I mentioned, previously about like the rising costs, they're going to be shop pricing and comparing around different marine dealers in their market, or even extending a little bit further outside of their market because they want to make sure that they get the right boat for the right price. And it's a high ticket, luxury item in a lot of cases. So there's a lot of trust that's put into buying from a dealership, to making sure that you're getting a good deal, you're getting what you want, and that dealers are providing that great customer experience to close that loop, to make sure that they come back a second, a third time for those boats. Because as we all know, once you're a boater, always a boater. It just always depends on the size, the type, and what you're needing it for. When your lifestyle changes, you might need a bow rider because now you got grandkids. You got to fit more people on that boat. When you just used to be the two of you, and you were able to get out there a lot more frequently. So these dealers need to be agile, as I said, because those consumers are going to be picking up the phone or submitting leads all throughout their buying process, and we just need to be ready for them.
I have a friend who lives north of the border in Ontario and reached out to a dealer via website, filled out a form, told him what he was interested in, a little bit about his budget, and it was days before he ever heard back. So we know that there is a breakdown between, during this discovery process. Where in your research, in your conversations with dealers, when you look at the data, the metrics, where is that performance breaking down the most?
I think it definitely varies from dealership to dealership. The best dealerships are very well trained, very disciplined. They have the operations. They have a great GM who's got the great sales staff. Right, they know how to switch pitch. They know how to move consumers throughout their journey. Maybe it's not something that they have in stock, or really they have to tease out what those needs are. But when a lot of that background research goes on behind the curtain, where dealers aren't able to see all the thousands of YouTube videos that this consumer looked at to compare the different boats that they need, and then they get a little snippet of information, right? Oh, I'm interested in this boat, Here it is. And that's all they have to go on, right? They have to be quick. They have to be responsive. Consumers expect, whatever it ends up being, if it's an email or phone call, now we have chatbots and AI, conversations and all of these different ways to communicate. They expect those responses to be quick and timely. And if they're not, a lot of those inquiries that are lost, are really left on the table between that discovery and consideration phase, because they're looking for someone to help them along the way. And if you're not that first touch, you may have missed that opportunity because they've already done the research and now they've moved on to somebody else.
Well, and I also wonder if the pandemic has actually played a counteractive effect in how we as a society respond to online leads, because they could be spam, and really good spam. They could be somebody who's just a tire kicker or just looking a looky-loo, as my mom loves to call them. She can't stand a looky-loo. We want someone who's highly committed to this unit. If I'm going to take the time to sit down, to give you a call, to respond to your online lead, I do see a downside of us all being internet fiends and having to be the smartest person in the room when you do eventually make your way to the showroom floor, because you've been yinsed before, you're not getting yinsed again, and you're going to be the smartest person. You're going to show up with all your research as a consumer and try to outsmart the salesperson. And so I do see a trend with our dealers looking at online leads the same way of, I'm not going to get cheated out of a conversation because I know what I need to know to sell on this unit. I know what kind of financing is going to be great for you. I have 1,000 things that I could pull out of a hat, but if you'd only let me, just come on in where I do my best work, I could convert you. I could actually sell you this boat. I could sell you this personal watercraft. I could get you the thing that you want. So I do see the online trend actually working against us. And my recommendation, what I would push and what our data is proving, is those that respond under 24 hours, whether that be an automated response, we see you, we're going to get to you, or we invite you to watch this 360 view of the boat of your dreams. Or it's a physical person who's actually calling and saying, hey, we got your lead. I'd love to talk to you in person. If you can make time after work today, I'll be here till 7 p.m. Because what we're seeing is most of the browsing is actually happening when those butts are hitting couches, right? It's after you've closed your business and you too have gone home. And what better time to start scrolling, right? And scrolling through the boats of your dream, or start talking to your spouse or your family or your friends. Look at this unit I'm looking at. Oh, it's listed at 12 other places nearby. Oh, shoot, what am I supposed to do now? And we see this with Pied Piper's PSI reports as well, is that even Pied Piper's recommending, so Fran O'Hagan over there is highly recommending less than 24 hours, quicker the better. And so if you can get it down to an hour turnaround, 4-hour turnaround after that online lead comes in, The after hours one is going to be the difficult one to solve. And I highly recommend having some sort of automated system, whether that be AI based or human controlled, that you set up beforehand. And that way you have something of a touch so that person doesn't go left unanswered. And then when you do open up the store, go ahead and give them a call. Put them on that top priority list. Knock it out with your coffee when you're still fresh and you haven't quite tackled all of the 999 problems that are waiting for you on the showroom floor. And just get it out of the way. Even leaving a voicemail is more personal than just letting that go for days on end. Because by the time it's days, they've already reached out to those other dozen people in your neighborhood. And one of those 12 has gotten back to them and said, I can offer a better price than that guy or that gal.
Absolutely. Those are some really good points. And one of the things that stuck out in some of the research that you sent me is over half of our online shopping is taking place outside of those normal business hours. So really, really important that response time is really a driver today. So let's talk about what the best listings look like. Bill, I'm so happy to hear you talk about trust. I don't think we talk about trust enough in the sales interaction process. That is what, if we're going to engage someone, if we're going to have any possibility of getting to the finish line with someone, we've got to earn that trust. It's a category where it's just critical. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the VDP is the new showroom floor. Let's talk about what the best listings look like these days.
Yeah, 100%. The best listings are as much information as you can possibly get out there as quickly as you possibly can. I mean, we already mentioned that these are high-ticket luxury items in a lot of cases that people are spending hours upon hours researching, and what they want to find is what they want to buy. They're expecting to step on the lot or, go to the boat show and see a unit that they looked at online, down to the color and the paneling on the side and, the interior, and basically be able to see as many photos as you possibly can, even if they are, thin photos or, you don't have to be a National Geographic photographer, right? They just want to see the real thing online, and as many as they possibly can from any angle, so that they can, tie those two things together in the online world and the real world. And then, they want to know what the information is about that boat. Our platforms have some of the best, first-party data in terms of specs and models and makes and information, down to everything that most consumers probably don't have the technical know-how to discern between what they need and what they don't. And then again, that's what the dealership and that's what the sales reps, they are highly trained on these products, and they can answer those questions for that consumer on what the difference is between boat A and boat B. And then finally it comes down to pricing, right? The transparency of pricing, as we know, as Hayley mentioned, different from COVID times when pricing seemed to be no option, right? People wanted and needed to get out on the water. They, were finding ways to socially distance, a term that, somehow is just now supplanted in our dictionary. But in today's world, they need to know what that price is. And it doesn't mean you have to give them the out-the-door price. It doesn't mean that there's still not going to be negotiations, but they at least want to have a good baseline on what it is that they will, be factoring into their budgets, so that they don't get blindsided when they walk through. And then, again, that trust gets eroded, especially when we talk about, the pricing, because nobody likes that that bait and switch mentality that's just going to hurt you in the long run.
Yeah, I think that the industry does have some room when it comes to transparency. You have the boat show price, you've got the Memorial Day price, the 4th of July sale, the friends and family, the good guy price, and sometimes I think it is really confusing to people. So talk about confusing. Sometimes we're confused about where our digital dollars go. I know we have lots of ways to measure, lots of ways to analyze. There was a time when you used to kind of throw a bunch of stuff up and saw what sticks and hope this works and hope that works. And those days are long gone. When cost per click goes up, execution has to go up with it. Talk about getting the most for your digital dollar.
Yeah, and it will vary, and it should vary throughout the season. The way that we go to market and the way that we approach, right? We're leading up to Memorial Day, and those, it's going to be red, white, and blue all over the websites and the banners, and everybody wants to know, what sale, what price am I going to get? This is the kickoff of summertime, and we have until Labor Day, which is the end of summer, right, to get those in-season deals. But and at the same time, it's going to be competitive and it's going to be expensive. So we have to kind of factor our strategy into being more smarter and efficient of where we're going to spend. So maybe we're focusing more on those consumers that are closer to the intent of buying or submitting a lead, and we're going to increase the budget because we have many competitors in the market that are also going to be spending and bidding and going after those same consumers. It's a very finite market of consumers that are in there. It's not growing. It's not a commodity type of product. So there's only a certain amount of people that we can actively know we're going to sell to on any given year. But then, in the off season, right, I mentioned before after Labor Day, so now we're talking about the winterization, getting those boats out of the water. They're going to need service. And also we need to maintain awareness for these dealerships. So there's a lot more cost-effective methods of advertising, such as display or Facebook or video, where we can increase the amount of impressions, the eyeballs that a dealership can put towards their brand while the consumers are in that shopping comparison phase. It's going to be a lot more cost-effective. That doesn't mean that they just have to cut things off cold turkey and just go down to zero and not spend anything, because by the time the consumer comes back around, there could be another dealership out there that's been in front of them for the last 6 months, and now they're top of mind and they're ready to move towards that intent phase, and they're going to be the first call or lead that they submit to. So there's so many times and so often than not, I see dealers that just set a budget at the same amount, same, every month per year, and just kind of hope that it's going to gain them, more in this month and maybe not as this month, but it's not reacting to the seasonality, which we know based off history and data that it's going to ebb and flow, and we can react to that. And we have highly trained, specialists that monitor that, cover the specific keywords, and are not wasteful in that as well. This is definitely not a market where we want to be everywhere to everyone, because it's just not going to get you the return on investment that you're looking for. So the dealers that are winning in this paid search game, they're not the ones with the biggest budgets, but they do have an always on strategy, a seasonal lift on top of the weekly cadences of going after spikes and monthly increases like Memorial Day holidays or July 4th holidays and Labor Day holidays, but they're ultimately generating a lot more quality leads, almost 50% more high quality leads when they're actively on at all times in front of these consumers, because the data keeps getting better and better, but you never know when that consumer is going to pull the trigger and be ready to buy. That's just something that, Google and Facebook will tell you they're this close, but, they predicting it down to the day and the second. I'm sure they'll get there with AI, but at this point, we just have to make sure that they can find you in the best and easiest way possible.
And then one more way to connect the dots between digital marketing and your website experience would be two things for me. Sorry, I said one. It's two. Automated email marketing, which we used to call marketing automation. I don't know when in our vernacular it changed, but automated email marketing is the hot new thing for re-engagement. I know it as marketing automation, but I've been in marketing for a while now. And this is the best way to, you get in front of them, you've created that awareness, you're driving that specific unit ad, they're seeing it throughout their ether of inventory or of internet searches, and then your timely email follow-up just seals the deal on your marketing approach. And the second thing that I love is digital retailing. And now I have a slightly different background than most people that find their way to Dealer Spike or working inside of a dealership. I have a food and service background. So everything to me is merchandising. You want to build the perfect plate of food, and that's how your eye sees it first. Well, I see a showroom floor the exact same way. The eye is the first receiver of information, of course. And so how you build your website, how you build your VDP, how you build your automated email marketing, all the way down to how your ads are. The eye is guiding the consumer to the bright and shiny. Zoolander was onto something about look at the pretty people, look at the pretty boats. And I do recommend, and I highly stand by, having some sort of digital retailing and inventory merchandising tools embedded into your website. So an easy payment calculator so that as a consumer, and I'm dream shopping, I can immediately know how much can I put down on this thing that you've worked so hard to attract my attention to? And how much is it per month? Can I twist my spouse's arm and convince them to let me go ahead and just get this thing? Live out my dreams of being on a boat, or relive my childhood. And then how can I finance this thing? Is this going to fit within our monthly allowance? Is this fit in with our annual budget? So those two elements complement a digital marketing program and a digital marketing strategy. And without them, we're seeing a lot of disjointed interaction. So you need the full picture in order to hit the full funnel. And that's what we ultimately saw with this when we were looking at the State of the Dealer report. Our top 10% of the dealers, well, to Bill's point, they're not spending gobs of Walmart money. They're not doing this incredible ad spend, but they are touching every single point of their buyer's experience. They're being found where their shoppers are searching. They're working very hard to put their dealership name in the spots that count. And they're being strategic about their follow-up plan. And because of that, they're churning out inventory. They're turning that showroom floor multiple times a year. They're moving units. Even though they're luxury, they're still moving units. And you don't have to spend a ton. You just need to know where your shoppers are coming from. Make sure your name is right front and center.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention before we move on is we spend so much time and effort and bandwidth and energy creating new leads, and there might be some really good solid leads in your CRM right now that you're just simply not following up on. Maybe someone who went to a boat show a year ago wasn't ready at that time, and we hear over and over that many dealers are abandoning those leads after the first no, and we know how many touch points it takes to get to the finish line these days. So maybe there's some gold right in your CRM today that you can go back and mine. Let's move on now to talk about we all want to know how we're doing right now. We've talked about the landscape. We've talked about things we could do, but how are we doing right now? Let's talk about how to audit your own store. 4 questions every dealer should ask this week as we're heading into peak selling season.
This is so awesome because Bill and I just asked ourselves these questions in a webinar on Friday. So these are fresh in our minds. And the first one is, are your units publishing everywhere they should? Are your inquiry paths, so that's forms, calls, chat, text, all of the above, are they actually working? So ask yourself that. Are they actually working? Am I seeing a lot of spam? Well, then maybe I need to add something to my lead form. Or I need to refine my lead form. Are my calls working? No? Well, then perhaps we should be talking to our salespeople. How are they handling? What's phone etiquette these days? Are they asking the right questions? Could be a training opportunity just to refresh what kind of questions are we asking these days to ensure that we're getting the right lead into the door, not those looky-loos, but somebody who's ready to buy. And then, chat and text, those are easy to fix because those are all through systems. So that's up to you how you approach that. Second question is, do your listings consistently show the basics the buyer needs to know? The price. Now, I know some of your folks that are listening are going to roll their eyes immediately when they hear price because there's so many MAP violations, OEM regulations, different co-op rules. Do we really want to show the whole price? Weight and freight tends to add to it, and also state and city taxes add to it, licensing fees, all that good jazz. But think about it from this point of view. When you car shop, you see a price, it's the MSRP price, the starting at price on the window sticker that piques your interest just enough to get you to the F&I guy. And then once you're at the F&I guy, you guys can finagle about what line items. So within your OEM, because I absolutely do not want any of our dealers listening to face any OEM repercussions, within the OEM guidelines of the brands that you sell, within your own dealership's regulatory stance, show the price if you can, or show a slash through the price and say, we can beat this, or we can do better, or call us for the best quote, but provide the base MSRP. And I'll tell you why before we get into the other things that you need to have consistently listed. The why is right now our AI crawlers through Google mainly are looking for price. They are reading that information as a line item. It does not matter if there's a slash through it or if it's a comedic, bubble art. It just needs to read a price somewhere on that unit so that when someone is looking at the Google overview and they say, how much is this 19-foot StarCraft? It can say, oh, it estimated at Bill Koehn's dealership local to you at $21,999. Great. I'm going to go check out Bill Koehn's dealership because that sounds great. That's well within my budget. So that's why we're going to push price, and you're going to hear price from us a lot this year. Photos, also huge, also an AI search tool. Specs and a clear next step that you need to take. And excuse me, we have some furry friends adding some comedic levity. I apologize. Bill, do you mind taking over?
Yeah.
Thank God for editing.
And we mentioned this a little earlier as well about the specs and just the data that we have available to us and just the amount of information that is out there, almost too much, right? Information. It can be overwhelming, but it's not just for consumers to read. It's, as Hayley mentioned, it's for the AI, for the crawlers, right? To rank you, to show up on those AI overviews and the AI modes that more and more people that are using on their phones that are asking questions directly to AI. What does this mean? What is a bilge pump, right? It may be their first boat and they don't know. So all of this information is just loading the data for the platform, for the sites, and all of the spec data, those brochures that the OEMs print that are just beautifully put out there in a showroom. I mean, all of that information is just right online for these crawlers and AI bots to read. So all of that's just going to make it more transparent and make sure your listings are consistent and as robust as possible for that buyer. And then we talked a little bit, but this, the speed to response and what to do with your after hours plan. I think, there's no exact solution because as we mentioned in your first point, Hayley, about like everywhere that you should be and the different, right? You have forums, you have chats, you have call, and you have text. So there are so many different ways, especially after hours, that they can submit a form. They might leave a voicemail or call the dealership, but mostly they're going to maybe chat with someone online, and in some dealerships it could go directly to the principal or to the GM, and they're getting that after hours or texting. I know a huge demographic population loves texting and just sending those those inquiries out there. It's simple, it's short, it's easy, and it just ensures that your website is on 24 hours a day. It does not turn off at 5 o'clock when the dealership turns off its lights and locks the doors. So the consumers expect, well, if the website's on, I should be able to get somebody to respond to me.
Yep.
And that just shortens the the period of time that they're waiting, and makes you more competitive, with other dealerships that may not have invested in those after-hour plans.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the one that I think is near and dear to my heart is the reporting numbers matching what your managers feel. I get this so many times in conversations. I'm just not feeling it. Or, we're going through the marketing and the reporting numbers, or maybe they're not going through the reporting numbers and they're just going on with the subjective feel of, hey, it was soft this weekend, or hey, it's been slow, leading up to this week. And then we look at the data and the reporting numbers and we can tie in, okay, well, maybe the showroom was a little soft, but look at how much traffic was getting onto your website. So maybe your consumers are a little bit further behind the journey of intent, and they're still going through this awareness phase. And as mentioned in the past, it was a lot shorter when supply was a lot smaller. But if supply is out there and consumers are looking on price, that journey is going to feel like a lifetime for some of these dealerships that say, hey, I talked to you you submitted a sales lead, and they just say, oh, I'm just looking, oh, I'm just, just starting my journey. And then it may be a month, maybe 2 months later, and they feel like that loop is broken, but it just may be that it's not as quick as it was in previous years. So just be patient, but also be persistent, without being so aggressive that they feel like you're really hammering them to make a decision, but just ensure that you're still there. And if they have any questions or they need more information, feel free to reach out.
Absolutely.
And then the last thing I want to close on is, David, you're starting to talk about CRM data. There's probably some golden leads in your CRM data. What Bill just said is perfect. It's on par with that. It's in line with that too. If you are getting a lot of not right nows, mark them as, I'm going to follow up in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. I'm going to follow up. You get a lot of people that are interested in your units when they come to the showroom because you're hosting a community cookie and tea kind of hang. Get them back. Get them back for your next community event. Your salespeople are your golden ticket to turning those inventory units. So why not use them? Why not pull those people in that express a monochrome of interest a while back? And if the numbers are starting to look a little soft, then dig into that treasure trove. Start calling people. Start emailing them. Hey, have you ever thought about coming back to check out that boat that we have? We actually got on Memorial Day special. I'd love to talk to you more about the 2027 units that are just about to hit the showroom floor and what kind of special I can offer you. There's a wide world of opportunity inside of your CRM, and it's not just what's coming into my website right now, but it's also what came into my website last month, the month before, last year even, and follow up with those folks. And so if you are noticing soft seasons, what a great time to do some outbound dialing.
Such a good place to leave it. Love that. New era, new challenges, new opportunities. I've so enjoyed the conversation. And if the conversation has you thinking about your own digital marketing setup heading now into the summer season in earnest, I know Dealer Spike would love to have a conversation with you. They can walk through exactly what a paid strategy looks like, how to think about your market, metrics that will tell you if your spend is actually working, something we all want to know, and a 4-question check that you can run on your own account immediately. So our thanks to Hayley Hollen, Dealer Spike Head of Brand and Client Marketing, and Bill Koehn, Director of Digital Marketing. Thanks for being with us. We've so enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks so much, David. This was fun.
And I'm David G., host of Boating Industry Insider. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe. We'll see you on the water. So long, everyone. Okay. Good luck with the interview.